Okay. So did it say that? Yeah, now it's recording. Okay, wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. We've got a great group here today. I am over in Portland, so I'm in a Starbucks. So I'm hoping that the traffic and music are not going to be too loud, but Dr. Vicki Johnson is going to be leading this session anyway, so that's going to be wonderful. So Vicki, I think I'm going to have you go ahead and introduce yourself and share about everything that you're going to present to us today. So thank you so much for being here, everybody.
Yes, Robin, thank you so much. And everyone, feel free to call me Vicki.
I'm a meeting for grad school.
I'm sorry?
It's a what's it called?
Oh, Robin, are you talking?
I was just saying I'm going through and muting people because I don't think they realized they
okay.
were off of mute.
Okay, I thought it was a question. Okay, no worries.
Well, if it was, please unmute yourself. My apologies, but I think it was somebody talking to somebody else.
Okay, no worries, because I know it's still the work day. My name is Vicki, and it's really nice to see you all. I'm based in Bend, Oregon, and I recently have been connecting with the various TRIO programs. I'm the founder and director of ProFellow. I don't know how many of you have heard of ProFellow, but we are a big information platform all about funding for graduate school, research, professional development, anything that falls under the umbrella. We call them all fellowships, but they're basically all sorts of opportunities inside our database. So I just want to give you a quick overview of that. We are a social enterprise, and so this is a free resource, our database, for anybody, for both students, professionals, faculty, anyone who uses it. And if you go to our main web page, ProFellow.com, if you want to get into the database, which I'm going to show you, you can just create an account here. Just so you know, we do not sell information. We're not like other scholarship platforms that, sell information as a revenue model. We primarily just make revenue by working with fellowship organizations and universities that have funding awards. So we have a big audience of people looking for funding. Then we have on the other side an audience of groups that are trying to access diverse candidates who are looking for merit-based funding. So it's a perfect synergy of value for everyone around. So when you come inside the database here, let me just clear this filter here. I just want to show you right now in this database, we have more than 2,800 funding programs. So that's not individual awards. Some of these programs have anywhere from 1 to hundreds of awards. So this is thousands of programs, millions of dollars in funding. So there's all sorts of things in here. And actually the name ProFellow originally came from the professional fellowship. Back when I was early in my career, I had found and then participated in a number of professional fellowships, like the New York City Urban Fellows Program, which is in New York City government. These were programs that gave you professional development, maybe for a couple months to a year. And so you couldn't find these things. They were really hard to find back in the day. So we really wanted to create a platform for fellowships, like professional fellowships. But then also the word ProFellow was because we wanted to help people get into these programs, because all of them have a competitive application process. Now in the database, we have professional fellowships, academic fellowships, and then a few years ago, we also started listing fully funded PhD and master's programs. And these are primarily programs that offer the graduate assistantship as a funding mechanism for full-time students that will give you the full tuition waiver and a stipend. So if if people are looking for fully funded PhD programs, you can actually use this type bar here and you can go in, you'll see that we have more than 700 programs. And even at the master's level, harder to find there, but if you're looking for master's programs that offer graduate assistantships to all or at least most of their incoming students, those are what we try to list here. So you don't really find full funding as commonly at the master's level, but let your students know this is a good place to start. We have more than 400 here, and these are programs that offer these assistantships. So I will say as a caveat, this is not the full list of the world's programs. So we say this is a good place to get started. At ProFellow, we also teach people how to find more programs like it. There's actually thousands of these programs that have full funding, which is impossible to list them all in the database, but we're really trying to add new ones all the time and give people the sense that, hey, you may not have to pay for graduate school. Like if you can look at these fully funded programs, this is an option that is really important for getting into graduate school. And as someone who paid for my Master's of Public Health in full with student debt, later when I did my PhD, I got full funding. And that's when I had the first time I had heard of full funding was later in my career. So this is why we're so passionate about helping people find funding, because research has found this is the #1 barrier that's preventing people from going to graduate school, is this idea that it's super expensive and, you know, they're gonna have to take out lots of student debt. And then for those of you that are advising students who are already in graduate school, you know, we also have master's and doctoral fellowships. Also, some of these fellowships are the big awards, the external awards that also could fully fund a degree. So a little tip, if you're looking at doctoral and master's fellowships, you put in the words full funding here. And this will bring up the really big, substantial programs like the NSF graduate fellowships. There's probably other ones in here that you have not heard of before. We try to put full funding around the ones that are really significant funding. Now, I always tell students, fellowships are a good way, like you should apply for fellowships. This is a good idea. However, not the best strategy for funding a full graduate degree, because a lot of these fellowships might fund a year, or they might just fund part of your research as part of your thesis or dissertation. So really, I always encourage people, look at the fully funded programs, which tend to be full-time, research-based master's and doctoral programs. So that's what we're looking for. In the professional degree world, and some of you may know this, like MBAs, law school, medical schools, professional doctorates, really hard to find funding. However, a lot of, especially first-generation college students and high-achieving college students, they get a lot of family and cultural pressure to go to law school, go to medical school, get an MBA, thinking that this is like a, you know, the financial ticket to security and financial security. But the student debt crisis is so high right now. A lot of people don't realize how expensive it is to get a professional degree in this day and age. And so I say, look, if you, for example, don't go to law school if you don't want to be a lawyer. If you want to do social justice advocacy work, nonprofit work, or other things, get a research-based degree that has full funding. You can do it in similar fields. There's, you know, even in the business world, instead of an MBA, think about a master's in data science or communications or finance. There's so many alternatives to what we traditionally think is a great degree that will help us get financial security. I really think the tide is changing on that as to the value of these programs that cost tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Also, just while we're here, if your students are also looking for professional fellowships, we've got those in here. Summer fellowships are funded, so these are great as an alternative to the unpaid internship. There's all sorts of neat funding, and these are usually geared towards students. It could be undergraduate or graduate students, or people who are about to graduate. So these are great. They get you your foot in the door. They give you funding. And then even for some of you with your doctorates, because we have this postdoctoral fellowships, we've lumped everything in there that is really geared toward people who are doctorate holders. So even though it's using the word postdoc, there's also fellowships in here for experienced faculty and scholars. So some of you might be looking for some opportunities there. Look at the postdoctoral fellowships. And I won't get too in depth, but we have lots of other filters here, disciplines, locations. Citizenship is good. If you have international students, they can put in their citizenship. And what I often tell them too is for the fully funded programs that are funding through graduate assistantships, often that is also open to international students. They can get an assistantship too. But you know, this is one of the few mechanisms, since they may not be eligible for other types of fellowships. So you can use keyword searches up here for subdisciplines. So that's the ProFellow resources that we have. Also here we've got, we do articles. So we feature fellows who have gone through these different programs. That's Lydia there, who we met at our Fellows Network dinner. There's, we try to feature stories of people from diverse backgrounds, so readers can really see themselves in the shoes of the people that are winning these competitive opportunities and see that these are for them. We have fellowship lists, we've got open calls. So it's just really a big resource to help you find things. And as some of you might know, I also am an advisor. I give a private advisor. I give workshops, speaking. I have done speaking for a number of McNair Scholars programs. This past summer, I did the Texas Christian University's 2-day graduate school boot camp. And this is because I've actually built my own graduate school admissions program called the Fully Funded Course and Mentorship Program. This is a private course that people can go into and get advising. But we've had a really, really high level of success helping people with all sorts of challenges get into graduate schools with funding. So even if they have a low GPA, if they are a new American, if they've been out of school for 10, 15 years, we really help them figure out how to tell their application story. And I've learned a lot I started this in 2019, so I've learned a lot about graduate admissions just in the process of working with a really diverse group of people by age, by discipline, by interest areas, by challenge. So I have a couple of tips as well that I'll share from some of the things I'm seeing from the field as people are applying to things. But before I hop into just my couple, I just had like a little slide on that. But does anyone have any questions about using ProFellow or using the database?
Could you share a little bit more about the undergraduate ones as well, since a lot of these
Yes.
directors and advisors are working with undergraduate students at this point? Thank you.
Definitely. Yeah, there's undergraduate fellowships in here too. I will say that for these fellowships, and again, these are funded by nonprofits and organizations, I wouldn't say that there's a lot that cover tuition. The fellowships tend to be for research, language study, even professional development. So and they're merit-based. So so they're a little different than scholarships that can be financial needs-based. But as you can see, we've got more than 160 undergraduate fellowships listed in here. There's a bunch of language ones because we just did a language list. But if you look, we have all sorts of different things. There's international fellowships, summer courses, study abroad fellowships. So definitely check that out. And if we go past, you'll see like women in STEM, Optica, there's all sorts of interesting things. So have your students check those out too. Any other questions? And you can look for fellowships for yourself in this as well. Robin and I were talking about that, like faculty are looking for fellowships.
Is most of the undergraduate fellowships, or are they for when students are nearing the end of their program? Like, as they get to like the senior year of the undergraduate?
Not all of them. Some of them might be open to as early as sophomore year, but I do think they tend to be for junior, senior year. So a good time to start talking to students is even their freshman year. A lot of times students miss the deadlines for these because often they're, months to a year in advance of when the fellowship actually begins. So if you're in the spring semester of your senior year, you probably have missed a lot of the undergraduate fellowships. Same for the summer fellowships. People are often surprised that they have fall deadlines for the following summer, but a lot of students wait until the spring to start thinking about their summer, miss all the deadlines. So it's good to talk to students about it early in the year, even the summer before. Any other questions about the database, and we can always come back. So Robin, I think we wanted to talk today too, just about graduate admissions, and I'd love to make this just like a conversation. But and I'm sorry, I don't have like a fancier slide, but I just talked to Robin, I think on Tuesday, about coming to this session, and I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you all. So I've been every year I'm advising through my programming about anywhere from 50 to 100 people at a time who are applying to graduate school, and we do it in a group coaching format. So not getting necessarily really into editing people's documents. In fact, what we do is teach applicants how to create their own authentic documents using frameworks and guidelines and advice. And then also half of it really is mindset. A lot of the students are really concerned about the competition, and they have imposter syndrome, and they're comparing themselves and feeling overwhelmed by the timeline, the activities. So we're really just there. Honestly, half of it is providing just the emotional support through the long period of putting together these applications, with the targeting of that December 1 deadline is when a lot of the fully funded programs have that December 1 deadline. And then there's also a smattering of deadlines early January. And then they go as late as March or April. But first and foremost, we teach students the funding deadlines for internal funding from the university. They usually want you to apply to those really early deadlines, December 1, sometimes a little bit earlier than that. The external fellowships, as some of you might know, are in like October, September. Sometimes they come before the graduate school application deadlines for the really big prestigious awards. So you have to almost be starting that even the first semester, second semester of your junior year, and really thinking that through, working on it through the summer to be ready for the fall deadlines. A couple of things that I'm seeing this year. One, AI disclaimers. So we did see that last year, some of the recommendation letters, templates for the, the faculty and professors and people who were writing letters had a field with an AI disclaimer saying, did you use AI? Yes or no, check mark, check off. So we said, we were telling students this year, you might need to be prepared to see if the graduate schools are going to start adding these disclaimers for the applicant, because definitely there's been a rise in the use of AI to write essays and resumes. I think at this stage, it's really at the detriment of the applicant, not really to their advantage, unless they're really able to use it strategically for small wordsmithing or other things. But when students are starting to write whole essays using AI and then trying to edit it from there, probably isn't going to come out as good as they might think. It's completely not in their voice. And it's going to just, it's recognizable. Now, AI may get better and better to the point where we can't distinguish. But I think though the graduates, oh, am I still, can you hear me? Okay, my video just paused. But I was curious, what are you all telling students about AI and using it with applications? Is anyone?
I generally have my students avoid it.
Do you think they're listening to the advice? I'm always curious, like maybe not. They're like, sure we are, but then you read their essays, you might say, does anyone disagree about like using AI right now for essays? Is anyone like, no, we should be teaching and using it and being hip with the times?
When we were reviewing essays for our scholarships for our program, we definitely were able to pick those ones out when it was like, whoa, these terms they've got in here, like this is not how they speak. This is totally not their writing. And it was really hard to like, where do we go? Like, how do we score this? Because we feel like it's not theirs. Yeah, there's that whole like ethical dilemma of like, do we just scratch theirs and theirs is not a valid application, or what do we do now? It's challenging.
I know. I think that's like where a lot of the selection committees are. They're like, what do we do with this? I think generally they don't like the AI generated essays. So it's definitely puts the applicant in a bad light when it's very obvious that they've used AI. So right now, I mean, I tell applicants, you should learn how to write properly, this is an opportunity to work on your persuasive writing skills, your essay writing skills, which is a key skill that you're going to use throughout your whole career. So someone may say at some point we won't even need these skills because we're just going to have AI to write everything for us. But I don't know. I mean, maybe it's my age. I don't really think that's going to be the case. I think these are really important skills. So I hope we can just communicate to students. Let's really try to authentically do this ourselves first, at least draft the whole thing before you're using wordsmithing with AI. But I have told applicants, you never know. If you spend a couple months working using AI tools to write your essay and then finally download the application and it says you need to check a disclaimer if you've used it, then you're going to be with the ethical dilemma of like, do I say that I've done it? Do I not? How does it make me look? What do they think? And you're going to probably just be wondering that all the way until you get your acceptance or rejection, and then wonder when you get your rejection, you're probably going to wonder, was that why? So I just say, try not to put yourself in that situation. We have to tell students this early. If this changes, great, let's share that with each other. But it's really like a big unknown. The second thing was about diversity. So of course, with affirmative action, a lot of the graduate schools have dropped their diversity statements because of the sense that they have to do this. However, I do think a lot of the schools do still really care about diversity. They want diverse cohorts, diverse students. And so I say, don't avoid talking about your identities, your gender, your race, your income. Don't avoid talking about that. I think you can and should explicitly state it where there's opportunity so that the school does know those things. It shouldn't hurt you to write an essay about your lived experience and your demographic background. Does anybody see something different and disagree with that? Or have you been telling students, yeah, don't mention diversity? So that's why I just tell students, if you come, I think a lot of students are afraid now to mention their diversity, and I'm trying to just make them feel like, it's actually okay. And in fact, I think it could strengthen your application to mention it. It's just that the school can't ask about it, but that doesn't mean they don't want to know about it. So it's a really unfortunate situation, but that's what I've been telling my students. Third is about replacing trauma stories. So there's actually some really good research that's come out that says, advisors have oftentimes, there's now research, there's an evidence base that says students that come from low income backgrounds or have trauma or other types of things from their background, they're actually encouraged to put that into personal statements, while students that don't have those types of backgrounds are encouraged to write a totally different type of personal statement. And this is, there's almost like this belief that if someone talks about kind of the traumatic things that happened to them as they were growing up, whether that's poverty, domestic abuse, mental or physical health issues, that this somehow will show resilience and be great. The problem is it doesn't overcome the implicit and internal biases of selection committees, who then are sitting there wondering, can this student make it through this program? Or is this person going to be really held back by these things? And the poor applicant doesn't have any context or space to fully explain, how they've dealt with their trauma, how they've dealt with challenging situations. So you have a very small word count. So I encourage students to replace any kind of struggle stories or trauma stories with inspiration stories. So I say you don't need to completely avoid talking about trauma, but what you should do is really make the bulk of your opening stories or other types of stories about the things that have inspired you to go into the field that you're in, that have inspired you to go to graduate school, discoveries that you've made, programs that you've run, things that you want to scale. Like if you found a solution to something in the course of your work or your research, talk about like the inspiration to want to scale that to more people, to more things. This seems to work really well because if someone's reading your statement and they feel inspired and like, wow, this person has ideas that we really need to invest in, I feel like that's a much more effective way. Whereas the trauma stories kind of can leave open a lot of unanswered questions. And whether we want to admit it or not, it does like reframe the reader. Does anyone have an opposing view of this? I'm totally open to like discuss it or see what folks think.
I was just wondering, so when it talked about, you're good. When it talks about inspiration stories and you're talking about replacing trauma stories, at the start of the essays, when you're talking about like, for example, I may have come from, generational poverty, low income, however that's inspired, you know what I mean? Like as a preface, and then how it's impacted what you've done, or, you know what I mean? But like where it's just kind of like almost like a footnote at the beginning, but not what the actual essay is about.
Yeah, definitely. And like that opening story, you might have a paragraph, right, for that story. So if you talk about, for example, and I've given people ways that they can reframe their stories so they have a more positive outlook than kind of a negative frame. So you have to think about the feelings that the story is causing in the reader. If the reader is going to feel like upset or sad for you, pity is something that often these stories like bring out in people. You don't, then it sort of overshadows the really positive information in your full essay, so it's sort of, you have to think about the emotional roller coaster that you might be putting a reader through. I do think a lot of people are inspired to go into the work that they do based upon their lived experience. But I always try to get them to reframe it. So I had a student from Africa. She is a medical doctor. She wanted to do her PhD in public health in the US. And her opening story was all about watching a child die in front of her with a vaccine preventable disease, and just like how this inspired her to want to go in. But the opening story was very like, oh God, like, because as a mom, I'm like reading this and thinking about this child, and it's almost like my mind is filled with all this negative emotion about this poor child. So I said, I asked her, I said, have there been any programs that you instituted in your local area that were really useful or effective, or you felt like, man, if I had more resources, I would expand this, like maternal health education or others? And she said, oh yeah. I said, well, maybe talk about that. Say, this is a problem in my community, children dying of these vaccine preventable diseases. Talk a little bit about the program that you started, how you can see an opportunity to scale that program, and how this is inspiring you to go to graduate school, to figure out how you get the resources and tools and networks to really broaden this to more people. And then she's like, okay, so that's like a much happier kind of inspirational story. That's like just an example. These Haley just reframing it completely. So you don't have to avoid it totally. But if you think about that with your students, just getting them to focus more on the positive things that came out of it. All right, so that's another one. And then faculty outreach. So for those of you advising students that are applying to PhD programs, it's funny, I saw someone who I really admire and who's on LinkedIn, and she was talking about that, PhD programs are numbers games. It is about GPA and this and that you shouldn't apply for really competitive programs unless you have this, and this. And I actually have a different view of this, because I actually think the PhD program process, like getting into it, is very much about connections. And students that have faculty connections before they apply almost always have a leg up. And even if they're not the top 4.0 GPA or have the most if they have publications or not, I've helped plenty of students that don't have publications get into PhD programs of funding. They were people that really started their faculty outreach in the spring before the December deadlines and really try to find faculty alignment with their research interests. The other thing is with the faculty conversations, they were able to modify their dissertation proposals or research interest proposals to be really aligned with the faculty member or members, So the hard thing about PhD programs is that they all have a different consensus about how much detail they want in the research proposal or the SOP. Some of them want the applicants to be broad and open. Others want a full-on traditional research proposal. So it's really hard to advise students, because there really isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to the research question or the proposal that's in the application. So I say you've got to talk to faculty. And also, you don't want to propose a dissertation topic that's not within their funding mechanisms. So you could be a 4.0 GPA and all that, but if you're too locked into an idea that's not in alignment with what the faculty want to invest in, then you may not get in just for that reason. So I was wondering, does anyone have questions about how to do faculty outreach, or you may already be advising students on this, but is anyone pushing their doctoral applicants toward faculty outreach? You can say, it's okay. You say, Vicki, yes, it's obvious. We all know this.
No, I don't feel like a lot of TRIO students have that PhD trajectory initially. And so I don't think that a lot of TRIO advisors, except for the McNair program, of course, are deep in on the PhD program. So anything you can share about how to better support those students would be wonderful.
Oh, definitely. And the reason I mentioned the faculty outreach is because I didn't know that this was something you were supposed to do or expected to do, because you do not, this is not mentioned on the admissions page of the PhD programs, but this is how the intergenerational knowledge of how these things work is the reason there isn't a whole lot of, still not a whole lot of diversity in the PhD programs. So faculty outreach is basically just talking to the PhD advisors, the faculty on these programs, and seeing, what research areas they want to see their graduate students working in. Remember, they're going to be, every incoming student is going to be assigned a key faculty advisor, their PhD advisor or supervisor, either right when they come in or within years 1 or 2. So, they need to have a sense of like who they would be matched with. And so I do a whole workshop on this because I had no idea this. And a lot of students, because of that, apply to PhD programs the same way that they would apply to master's or undergraduate programs, not realizing there's these added unspoken steps. Now, if you've got, even for TRIO students, I know that's not the focus, but if you do have really research-focused undergraduate students who could potentially go from undergrad to a PhD because they're doing undergraduate research, especially in the STEM fields, or they're just like a real high achiever, it would be good for them to get matched up with someone who understands faculty outreach, because they can, it has been done many times, go direct to PhD. And there's more guaranteed funding in the PhD than at the master's level. So you don't have to have a master's to get into the PhD. But sometimes some programs require that you have a master's. It certainly can, you're going to be, as an undergraduate, you will be up against people who have masters when you're applying. So that's like, you really would need that advising to make the jump from BA to PhD, or, Bachelor of Science to PhD. So if you have students like that in TRIO, see if you can find some sort of advisor or professor in addition that maybe could help walk them through that. And I give workshops on this. So if anybody, you're like, oh yeah, I have at least 5 students that are doing this, sure, like reach out to me. I'm happy to do the workshop that I give on this. In terms of funding, what I've seen at the graduate level, of course, I'm sure you've all seen the news, the economy's not great. Funding's getting cut. There's entire universities and graduate programs shutting down because of the enrollment rates. I would say, again, like when you have students that are looking at all different types of graduate programs, if funding is a really key challenge for them, like I need to get funding, I don't have any family funding or way to fund this, really look closer, definitely at STEM programs. They tend to have more funding than humanities and other fields. Even if they're not in STEM though, I mean, really focus on the research-based degrees that have a research focus, like a master's thesis that's research-based. They're more likely to have graduate assistantships that could fully fund the degree. And just in general, look for programs that offer assistantships. I'm often talking to students from, like I said, that want to go to law school, medical school, and others because the family is pushing them in that direction, not realizing just how incredibly expensive it is. And even for law school, the average amount that a student is taking out is $160,000 in student debt. Then when you add on all the interest and all that, you could be a lawyer and still be broke. So that's why, I hear students saying, I want to go to law school, but they don't actually want to practice law. They want to work in public policy or government or nonprofits. I say, well, look at these other degrees that offer funding. The other thing is too, if you go to graduate school, especially if you're coming right out of undergrad and you get into a degree program, let's say the field, after a couple of years, you're like, man, I really don't want to do communications anymore. I did my master's in communications. If it was fully funded, a lot less of that investment that you made in the degree is really just the investment of time. And really, you can couch any graduate degree toward any, other field if you just get that professional development to figure that out. How do I make my resume? How do I get my foot in the door? Maybe do a summer fellowship or internships. You can always change course and disciplines, but the worst is if you take out a lot of student debt for a degree in a field that you no longer want to work in. That's when you're like, oh, I wish I'd met you years before so I could tell you about these options. So have your students, especially any low-income students, please have them check out the database first for all the different types of degrees that offer funding. And then also keep in mind, these same students, the students that you serve, are getting dished out all sorts of advertising for-profit, low-value offerings. The for-profit university industry with all these online degree programs that are sold as inexpensive and flexible. I mean, there's lawsuit after lawsuit now because they're more expensive than they say they will be. Often they don't get you to the career outcome that you're looking for, but they are also targeting their advertising to particular populations. And it's just unethical. And these populations don't know that they have funded options available to them, they might easily be swayed in that direction to do the online degree. I do hear a lot of students saying, oh, I want to do an online degree because I want to work, I don't want to do this, I want to do that. But online degrees are also expensive. So, you know, and they can take a long time. And a lot of people don't finish the online degrees because they don't give the same kind of educational experience that you'll get on a full-time on-campus program. So I'm also trying myself to educate more students, like just be wary, I'm not saying all online degrees are bad, definitely not. There's some great ones out there, but you have to be pretty discerning and read the fine print and really fully understand what you're going to pay for this over time, because they often hide the pricing or they smudge it to make it sound cheap. I'll stop talking for a minute. Any questions or discussion about funding that we want to talk about?
So Vicki, if an advisor was looking for current undergraduate students, whether they're looking for a master's or for PhD, for the funding aspect of this, are there certain filters they should be trying to utilize, or different timeframes, or would they just go to that open call and start there, or what would you recommend?
Oh yeah, definitely. So we have some in the database here. So if you look under like fully funded PhDs, let's say you're looking at the Brandeis fully funded PhD in social policy. For most of these, there isn't like a separate application, especially at the PhD level. It's typically that if you get into this program, you're going to be offered a full funding package. That's, again, this is something I didn't understand early in my career. And then other people in academia think this is like really common knowledge. And believe me, there's a huge swath of people in between that have no idea that full funding exists. So it's not common knowledge, especially not among first generation college students. So, you know, if you look at if you come into here, all of these have like a link to the website and you can read a bit more. I always say that students should look at the funding and financial packages. Sometimes I just even look for keywords on the page like funding. Let's see. See, it's not showing up. See, the other problem with these websites is that they're like buried on like multiple pages. So they'll have a page about fellowships, but you need to look at like admissions and financial aid to read a bit more about full funding. And so for PhD, they'll say every full-time student receives tuition and stipend support. So what's hard about Googling for these programs is that they all use different terminology. So I do, for example, tell students when you're on Google, you can do, let's say you're doing a PhD in education, you're looking for funding. You can use in parentheses terms like full funding with quotes. And then you'll see though, right at the top, sponsored online doctorate education. I can 100% guarantee that it's not fully funded, but they're using these keywords. We have lists of articles, you know, from ProFellow that go, these are not advertising. These are just lists that we've created. But this is a good way too. I always tell people there is these like different lists. We were one of the first groups to do these lists and now like everyone's copying us. So now it's actually hard to find the .edus, but this is where you want to look at the .edus, because if that term full funding is on their website, it should show up in your Google search. The hard thing is if they don't use the term full funding, probably not going to show up in your Google search. So you've got to do fully funded, full funding, full financial support, assistantship. So you have to like use all these different terms, but very worthwhile exercise to do. And also I tell students, make sure you're looking at the broader discipline. Some people will say, oh, I'm looking for something in, I don't know, hotel and tourism or something like that. And I said, well, that might be more broadly in a business PhD or a marketing PhD. So think about the broader disciplines, because you may not find a PhD in the very specific subdiscipline, but you can do a dissertation on that topic in a broader discipline. Same with interdisciplinary things, you know, does this fall under international affairs or does it fall under women's studies? If you're, let's say you're looking at women in politics, I said it could probably fall under either. You have to find the faculty that are doing research in that kind of area, and they could fall in both international affairs programs and in women's studies programs. So that would be my key. So sorry, I went on a long tangent there, but same thing with the master's programs. Let's say you're looking for a master's. They don't use the term full funding commonly at the master's level. Usually what you're really, they will say assistantships, because often they won't give it to all students coming in. So I would say, you know, sorry, I'm a terrible typist. Master's education assistantships, I would go past the ads, usually not true. But see, like Oregon State has graduate assistantships, and these are the great things that offer the tuition waiver and the stipend. But the questions that students have to ask at the master's level is, how many master's students, or what percentage of master's students get these assistantships? Is there anything else I need to do? Now, often at the master's level, you're not getting it right at acceptance. Sometimes you have to apply separately, or, you know, you have to kind of negotiate it once you get into the program. Hey, I really need some funding. Is there an assistantship available? It's less common at the master's level, but there's more people applying for master's programs than PhD programs. So that is the challenge. And then for the rest of the groups that are applying for the professional degrees, law school, medical school, you have to look at the university itself. What kind of internal funding do they offer, and to what percentage of students? And then maybe external fellowships. But there's not going to be a whole lot, and they're going to be nationally competitive. So few people are going to get those external fellowships for the professional degree programs. So if you have a student that's kind of like open, think about the research-based degrees. That's what I always tell them. To answer any other questions about funding. And I'll just mention, if you're ever seeking, you know, a speaker or someone to help do some programming at your university on funding sources for students or even for faculty, please feel free to email me. I do speaking all over, and I moved to Oregon about 4 years ago. And it's sad that this is kind of my first like foray into really connecting with the Oregon universities. I was in California before. So if I'm really thankful, Robin, for the opportunity to connect with folks here, because I can travel easily around Oregon. I do it all the time.
Well, and we're so excited that we're going to be in Sun River for our conference, and look
Yes.
forward to having you participate with us there as well. This information has all been so wonderful. I'm so appreciative that you were able to join us today. I'd love to open it up for any other questions. I see people in the chat thanking you for all this great info.
My pleasure. And let me put my my email, my direct email, to Vicki with an I at ProFellow.com. And I'm also really active on LinkedIn, so you can always find me there as well. So feel free to ping me on there. I'm happy to help. And yeah, definitely. I'm just absolutely obsessed with funding. I mean, I grew up as a low-income college student, and I feel like these fellowships have really helped me to get into, I mean, I had a 15-year career in public health and emergency management before doing ProFellow. And also, a lot of the students might be interested in professional fellowships too. I know the job market is not great right now for recent graduates. I think fellowships are an excellent way to get your foot in the door, especially in kind of service-oriented fields like government, nonprofits, journalism and other areas, because often the universities don't focus heavily on that. Like I went to Cornell undergrad and it was like finance, consulting, or medical school. And I couldn't find any information about how do I get a government job, which was what my passion was. And that I got my foot in the door through the Urban Fellows program in New York. So there is so many professional fellowships for recent graduates. So if you ever want a presentation on that too, I'm happy to share.
Wonderful, thank you. And this is also such a good reminder for all of the TRIO professionals here that these could be opportunities for you as well, and not just for your students. So to be thinking about that as you're thinking about pursuing another master's opportunity or pursuing the PhD, that this could all be for you as well.
Yeah, thank you. My brain is stewing. I literally just came out of a meeting for our first Gen Day celebration. And I'm thinking like we had this idea of like trying to get a panel of people that have post-bac degrees to like really inspire students. And I'm at the community college, so we're at, you know, just the start for students, but we're like dream big, like these students, you know, we want to bring people that have done it or that are in it to inspire students. So now my brain's like, I might be in touch with you soon, Vicki.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And for the community college students that, you know, we're going to transfer over, like I've spoken with like Phi Theta Kappa and others. I mean, I would love more community college students to know about this in their second year, their sophomore year, because sometimes they get kind of lost in the mix once they get onto their 4-year campus. But these programs are looking for students that are community college transfers as like a diversity point. So yeah, like I could curate a list for a talk if that group is looking for opportunities. And actually a lot more fellowships are really thinking about that group because they tend not to get targeted on campus for like Fulbright and, you know, Rhodes and these other big awards. But we have a lot of people in the ProFellow community that are community college transfers that have won some of these nationally and globally competitive fellowships. So they should be excited about the opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely is. I feel like for our students that plug in and really like get involved here, either they're like, you know, so eager and ready for that transfer, or they're like, they want to stay. And so there is that transfer, that window of like losing them and then helping them find their new niche and community over there. It's hard.
Oh, I want to mention, this is free and open. The PPIA grad school fair this fall. It's October 18th. So this is coming up. So this one, let's see. I'm the keynote for this one on October 18th. This is an opportunity for anyone that's interested. There's not just graduate schools there, but others. And I'm giving my talk on how to get into the world's most competitive graduate programs. But this is virtual, it's free. So if you have like a newsletter, send it out to your students. Let me put this link in the chat. And PPIA, if you haven't heard of it, Public Policy and International Affairs, this is a program for rising seniors that are from underrepresented backgrounds to help them prepare for applying to policy schools like the Master of Public Policy, Master of International Affairs. It is an excellent fellowship and opportunity. So check that out as well too if you have any like service focused students. They're also just generally interested of them going into public service careers. So it's just a great network and leadership development tool. So check that out too, because that'll be at this main page here. They'll have like the fellowship program.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing about this. I had not heard about this yet. This is wonderful. And when you were talking about really highlighting the community college experience, is that something you would recommend that they add to their essays or highlight as part of their letters?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of students go to community college to start because it's less expensive. They might be they are more first gen students in community college. But for that, the group that's going on to the 4-year degree, I mean, I think so much resilience, so, like just the level of I don't know, the commitment to their studies. I think like this is what these fellowships are looking for. So definitely talk about that in your personal statements. How maybe you started that thinking I'm just doing the 2-year degree and then got so into your studies and realized that you had some real like skills and talents and passions, it inspired you to go into the 4-year degree. So that's a great inspiration story, I think.
Wonderful. Well, we've almost gone the full hour. This is wonderful. So I'll be sure to send out this recording to everyone because I know there were people that weren't able to attend. And then I'll also be sure to feature this upcoming graduate school virtual fair for all of the TRIO programs to know about as well. So thank you so much, Vicki.
Absolutely.
Does
Yeah,
anybody
thanks,
else have
Robin.
any other questions or anything they'd like to check in with Vicki about right now? It's like we're just getting lots of thanks.
Great. Well, Robin, I'll sign off because I don't know if
Okay.
you meant to have like another group session. So I'll
Oh,
sign
no,
off.
no.
Thank you everyone for your time today. And please do not hesitate to reach out if you're looking for more information or support on these topics. I'm happy to help over here in Bend.
Wonderful.
And let me
Yeah.
know if you're in Bend.
Yeah. Wonderful.
right,
Thank
thanks
you
so
so
much.
much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.